Well, it's good to see you, Lisa.
Well, thanks, Nate. I guess we're here for a real reason.
We are here for a reason, and it actually is content that you have consumed and you wanted to share today.
Yes, I have. Maybe open the topic today rather than spill the beans right at the beginning. Let me ask if you have an example that you'd be willing to share when you either had something that was really challenging or that you were working towards, and when it was a success, you got really excited about
Well, since I know what we're going to talk about,
it.
I'm going to load this with just a smaller example. And I was actually sharing this with somebody yesterday when I was on a podcast, and we were talking about habit development, but more so like winning your internal dialogue and what that can do and why that's really important. And I was using the example of how I like our cold plunge right now for some reason is like insanely cold, or at least it feels insanely cold. I thought it was so cold and I went out there and it was the same temperature it always is, but for whatever reason, it's really, really cold. It felt so cold. And so did Bree, but I was sharing that example because every time that I get in, it's just terrible. It like, just never gets better. And I know a lot of people say that, but I have to have this mentality where as soon as something negative hits, where like I will get in, and this happened yesterday, like I get in and then immediately and I'm like, I'm going to get out. It's 15 seconds. This is just terrible. I don't want to sit here. And then I have to say, I force myself to basically say three positive things. You know, you're burning your brown fat. I'm going to come out mentally strong and you're going to be proud of yourself on the other end. It's only 5 minutes. You can do this for 5 minutes. And if you can do that, you can do more, more hard things. Right. And so I use those types of situations to win the internal dialogue for myself. And that really has helped me take on greater challenges, whether that they're longer term, like forming a habit, whether it's doing something for the business, whether it's just simply like getting outside and doing a walk for 75 hard, or our 100-day challenge for the 10,000 steps. It's like the things that you don't want to do. And you're like, this is going to be terrible. I actually, as soon as my mind immediately says, you're just going to be in so much pain, or, oh, this is going to be so tough, or you're so tired, you don't want to do this, I immediately flip to the other side. Like I'm good at catching it now. And then I
Wow,
actually start to say, list three things specifically that you are going to feel on the other end of this.
that's amazing. We're going to pause. Tell Mary Louise and Francis to cut and restart.
Okay.
That example is terrible.
That was
So,
terrible? Why is that terrible?
but I was looking for an example with external validation when you were like, I just did this, and all these people like applauded me on the back.
Well, I don't think I heard the word external validation on that. I thought you said when you feel good on it. So maybe I missed that, but I'm pretty sure you didn't say that.
You were like, I know that. Okay, so let's try this again.
Okay, this is going well. So take two.
Take two.
All right.
All right. So, Nate, I wanted to kick off today and was hoping you would share a story from your own journey, whether it's personal development, entrepreneurship, maybe being a father, doesn't matter. Just something that you got a lot of external validation from, and it made you feel good. So it could have been a goal you were working on, or something else that was a byproduct of hard work, but externally people recognized, and it really made you feel good and kind of put some pep in your step.
Yeah. Well, since this is habitual growth and the content that we're creating, I'm actually going to use our own example of things where we got external validation, and that's just the mobile application that we created. We're doing a lot of stuff at the company, but there was just a tremendous amount of work getting it from idea through framing and then actually like launching the application, getting people into it. And it's pretty awesome because number one, it was a very long journey.
Yeah.
And you never know like what's on the other side. Are you actually going to get to the point where you launch something, somebody's going to see the external product, and then you get new people into the product, and you don't know if they're actually going to like it or not. And, everybody that's jumped in, whether or not they stay is a different conversation. It's, everybody that goes in is like, wow, this is a really beautiful app. I really like it. I can see, why people use it, how it's actually helping me in my own personal life and helping my structure. And, our goal at the end of the day was to create not just an outline or process to help people, but actually create a product that they can take with them that grows with them. And so that's super validating when a lot of people especially those that we don't know, come to us, right, as a
Yeah.
complete stranger that says, wow, you've changed my life. You've actually, created something that I use every single day in my life, and it's moving me forward. It's helping me become a better person. And that's just extremely validating.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. I'm super proud of us too for that. And that's a great segue into a podcast that I was listening to yesterday. And there was an episode that was so fascinating for me. And it will probably resonate with a lot of people that have either are people pleasers, type A people, that really like perfection over anything else and kind of seek to always hit that mark. Or if you maybe are the opposite, where the world is always terrible and you really get sucked into the depths of pity and despair, when things don't go your way. And the framing of the episode was around maintaining a neutrality mindset. So maintaining equilibrium when it comes to your emotions, no matter if things are good or bad, because there is a risk when you tie how you feel to an external validation. If you find success in something, and in this example in the podcast, it was this person was writing a book, and someone said, well, aren't you going to celebrate if you make this and this top list? And she said no. And they were like, well, why wouldn't you celebrate? That's a great accomplishment. And her rationale was, I want to be proud of myself for doing the things that I needed to do and I set a goal out for, no matter if I make this great list and everyone reads my book or I don't and no one reads my book, because it's not about someone externally providing me validation that's
Mhm.
going to dictate my emotion. It's the hard work, the process, and achieving the milestone or the goal of actually writing the book that I should be proud of.
Mhm.
And the same thing, went with, okay, if the book tanks, would you be really sad? Would you want to take a break? And I think for me, that particularly hit home because I think a lot of people do seek external validation, even though we don't think we do. You get a promotion at your job and you want to go out and celebrate, or there's a Super Bowl and your team wins and everybody, you're whatever. So it's a terrible example, but we're constantly seeking this validation or some emotion that we hook onto that then allows us to say, I'm patting myself on the back. I've done a good job. And we should be patting ourselves on the back for the good job, no matter the outcome, if somebody sees it or not.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think external validation is important in some degrees, but I do think it's overrated because, think about what we've talked about historically in some of our podcasts, and that's just, enjoying the journey, right? It's not about the final destination. Sometimes it
Yeah.
is about the final destination, but it also depends on what's your holistic view, right? So at the end of the day, if you're going to write a book, your first step is, maybe it's every day you're going to spend an hour writing, right? And then you get through that and you're proud of yourself because you've been doing it for 6 months. And then you finally have a book, right? Well, then you have to get it reviewed and then you have to find a publisher, right? And then it has to get out there and then you have to market it and you sell it, right? And so there's so many milestones. But I think what that woman was saying is the importance of enjoying the journey, not letting external factors slow you down or deviate you from the path, that ultimate goal of creating something. And I think that's the important piece. Like, as an example, when we set out to create this app, our end goal at the end of the day was we wanted to create an app that helped people. Right now, whether
People.
or not people use it, that's a different milestone.
Yeah.
There's a whole slew of things that have to take place that we have to implement to make that happen. But we are going to celebrate the win, which could be big or small, depending upon your perspective, how far out or holistic you're looking at things. But it's still a win and you want to celebrate that because, for us, this is a new industry. It was a new category. We had to pool our life experiences together and, frame them in a way into a process that took our education and our experience that has real value and then package that up to a place where people can use. And that just takes a tremendous amount of work. So it's not tied to the external factor of, is this going to help the number of people that we want to, that 5 million people that we've set our goal on, but it is still a product that is out there that is valuable that we are proud of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you're right. There is time and place for external validation. I think the risk is and this woman articulated it really well, is a lot of what we do with habitual growth, right, is building better habits, breaking bad habits. And when you seek a feeling based on an external validation, you will continue to want to seek it. And then you get to a point where you've created an emotional habit or an emotional crutch that you can't feel good without it. And so then when you go through a period of life where you don't have as much external validation, you then begin to question yourself as a person and your character, when really it could be something completely out of your control why that external validation isn't occurring.
Yeah, yeah, that or you've placed the value on things that really weren't that important to you. You just find it out the wrong way, right? You
Yep.
and I know a ton of super successful people, and one of the most common themes is like if you're chasing money, you're going to ultimately end up finding, if you get there and you end up having a lot of money, you're going to end up finding that that really wasn't that important to you after at a certain point, right? You're like, oh, well, I need to now frame it differently. So I think you can use some of this stuff as motivators, but
Mhm.
intrinsically, you really want to try to figure out why you're doing something and are you answering the call in doing that, right?
Yep.
And I think that's super important. And for me, as an example, one of the conversations I was having yesterday again is just trying stuff like, I will give us a little pat on the back of like, hey, we're just going to try some stuff. We don't know if this is going to work. We've got, as much information as we think we can. We've, pooled our consumer feedback group to, point us in the right direction or at least provide their opinions. But at the end of the day, unless we take action, nothing is going to happen. And so it doesn't really matter like what people tell us unless we take the next steps. And so I always like to think about it. It's like, do we have 70% of the information? If so, okay, let's go. Like, let's try something and then we'll keep iterating as we go, but it's never perfect. And I think that's something when you focus on that external validation, I honestly don't really hear a lot of that right now. And I actually kind of
Hmm.
take some of that negative feedback as success in a weird way, where it's
Okay.
like, yeah, so like, hear me out on this. It's like when people talk about haters, and I don't think I have any haters, and nor would I ever think that, but I think people have a perspective. And when you get in front of enough people, you're bound to get feedback, right? Not everybody's going to love you. You're going to have somebody share
Yep.
something about you. And to me, I'm like, okay, well, I've reached a level where people are saying something, right? And,
Yeah.
and, and that means the efforts of going into trying something is working because people are paying attention or people are getting involved and they're participating. And even if they're just bored and they're looking and they want to be a shitbag and they're gonna just say something negative, that's okay. But at least it's out there and it's something that we've created and it's drawing some sort of attention. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I just think it's important for people, behavioral awareness, right? Why am I doing what am I doing? Why are the feelings I have attached to X, Y, and Z? Why does this exist? And we are such creatures of emotion. And that's largely why we built habitual growth, is to take out the emotion from a lot of what we do and set goals and be accountable to ourselves and commit to the process to ultimately see success realized in our own life. And a lot of that comes from detaching emotions a little bit from the result and putting them squarely on the hard work that you put in to ultimately achieve a result. Even if it might look different than what you originally thought,
yeah.
there's still the work that you've put in to get
Yeah,
there.
100%. And honestly, thinking about this as we're kind of talking here, I would circle back to the first thing that you mentioned where this woman said, it's the feeling. I'm not going to celebrate until I have this feeling. And I think in taking action, in moving yourself forward and celebrating those small wins, what is important in that is when you get better and better at saying, I'm not going to celebrate until I reach this milestone, but in this milestone, I'm going to feel this. This is my emotion. This is my environment. This is what it's going to do for me. I actually like that because I think you can tie that into visualization and manifestation, where it's like, hey, I'm going for this. And at this moment in time, I'm going to feel this. And I personally have struggled in that where it's like I can sit down and I can try to visualize, but I'm not great at it. It just takes, it takes 10,000 hours like anything else. Like it is a practice skill, but I'm getting better because now I can put myself in that environment, right? If I'm picturing a beach, I can imagine what my skin feels like when the sun is beating down. I can hear the rustling of like the palm branches and the breeze coming off the ocean, like, whatever your example is, but putting yourself in that environment and then saying, okay, if I'm writing this book, how am I going to feel? Am I going to feel relaxed? Am I going to feel excited when I, get that publisher to bite? When am I going to get, excited when the editor is, sending it back to me and they tell me it's a good job? Like, I don't know, whatever that is, but you can start to put yourself in those moments, and that's even more powerful when it comes to that attraction.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would love if people are listening to this, if they drop experiences into the comments. I would dare to believe we're not alone in some of this and what's worked for people,
Yeah.
and really being able to separate from an outcome and tie it to a process. And then, if you can take it one step further, the manifestation part, because you're absolutely right. It's one thing to dream big and go, when I get this, I'm going to be happy, in air quotes, whatever that is. But what are you actually feeling and visualizing at those major milestones that are going to get you there? Because that's an important element of pulling energy and things to you to help you achieve that ultimate outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, I mean, kudos to you for listening to this and trying to share that. I mean, these are the experiences that you need. I like what you said about people, sharing their own. Like, what are you visualizing? What are you trying to drop in? What milestones are you trying to hit? Because that type of stuff is really important. And especially if you join our school communities, that's the place where you're going to have a community of people that can rally around, ask more questions, prod you
Yeah.
on things like this, and help that stuff become a reality a lot faster than you can do it by yourself. So kudos to you for sharing and bringing attention to this.
I'll be back next week. Don't you worry.
Good to see you.
All right. Bye.